Today, we are going to deal with MCQs from macroeconomics which are expected to appear in national eligibility test. We are going to divide the whole session into two parts. Part 1 will deal with consumption function theories, demand for money theories, multiplier and accelerator, classical and Keynesian theories, and national income concepts. We will start with consumption function theories, and the part 2 will deal with Phillips curve, MCQs on business cycle, inflation, unemployment, and MCQs related to ISLM curve. I have included questions which are expected to appear in national eligibility test and some of the questions which have already appeared in some of the previous year question papers. We will start with consumption function theories and consumption function. Let's start with the first question which appeared in 2012. In the equation C equal to C0 plus C1 YD, where C is the planned consumption expenditure, YD is the disposable income, C0 is autonomous consumption, C1 is MPC, which of the following is the endogenous variable? So from the question itself, we can understand that C equal to C0 plus C1 YD is, they are talking about consumption function of Keynes. And you know that consumption theory related to Keynes is absolute income hypothesis, right? So according to him, there is an autonomous consumption, that is C0, and we know that autonomous consumption is that consumption which doesn't depend upon income. Even if we have zero income, we have to survive and there will be some level of consumption. That is what has been shown as C0, like food expenditure. Even if we don't have income, we need to survive in this earth, so we have to consume something, right? So that is called consumption, autonomous consumption. Coming to C1, that is MPC. According to absolute income hypothesis of Keynes, C1, that is MPC, that is change in consumption with the change in income, is considered to be constant. It is positive and constant. So, and YD is disposable income, that is after all the deduction, whatever income is there in your hand to dispose or for consumption is known as disposable income. Now coming to the question, they are asking us to identify which of the following is endogenous variable. So we need to understand the difference between exogenous variable and endogenous variable. In this consumption function, we know that C0 is autonomous consumption, which doesn't depend upon any of the variable in the model. So that is a kind of independent variable. Exogenously determined, any of the factors or variables are not determining Z0, that is autonomous consumption. So it is exogenously determined, which is determined from outside the model, right? And coming to C1, we know that MPC is constant. Even that is constant and positive, that means it is also exogenously determined. It is not dependent on any of the variable inside the model. So that means that endogenous variable is dependent variables which depend upon the variables that are there inside the model, which are determined or whose values are determined on the basis of the values of other variables in the model. We have certain options. We need to find out which of them are endogenous. C0, as already mentioned, C0 is autonomous consumption which doesn't depend upon income or any other variable in the model or in the consumption function, so C0 cannot be the answer. C1 is MPC, and according to absolute income hypothesis, it is stable. So it is stable and positive, which has been already determined by some outside factor. So it is constant. So it is not depending on any other variable in the model. So it cannot also be the answer. C1 is MPC, which is exogenous variable, which is a independent variable. We are left with C1 YD. C1 YD can be the answer, where MPC is combined with disposable income. That combination can be considered as an endogenous variable here, because here consumption is dependent on income. C1 YD combinedly can be considered as an endogenous variable, even though C1 alone is MPC alone is an exogenous variable. When we are considering C1 YD as combined form, we can take it as an endogenous variable. So the answer can be option 3. You can go through the explanation which I have given. Whatever I have explained right now has been mentioned in this slide. The option is 3, that is C1 YD. Moving on to the next question. Chronologically arrange the following consumption theories. So for these questions, either you need to apply logic or you need to by heart all the theories that has been introduced and who has introduced them, the time period at which they have been introduced, or you can simply use the logic. Okay, we know that absolute income hypothesis has been introduced by Keynes, and it is one of the first consumption theories that came into being. And we know that Kuznets paradox is something that criticized, or that was completely that found loopholes in absolute income hypothesis and came out with a theory. Kuznets came out with a theory telling that Keynes theory has some loopholes, and this is that. So we know that first has to be Keynes and then has to be Kuznets, right? So use some kind of logic if we are not able to memorize the uh, theories establishment, right? So these are theories of consumption where absolute income hypothesis has been introduced first in 1936 by Keynes, Kuznets paradox by Kuznets in 1946, relative income hypothesis by Duesenberry in 1949, life cycle theory by Franco Modigliani and Albert Anto and Boomberg in 1954, permanent income hypothesis by Milton Friedman in 1957, and there are other theories which are worth mentioning, which it should be useful for you, right? So coming back to the question, we know that now it is one absolute income hypothesis came first, then come 5, that is Kuznets paradox. Now check which one will be the code, 1 5, so it has to be 2. Let's make it more correct, like it next is 3, that is relative income hypothesis. Yes, relative income hypothesis 1949. Then comes life cycle hypothesis, that came in 1954. Yes, so that's 2 will be the answer, 1 5 3 4 2, right? Moving on to the next question. In Keynes' equation of absolute income hypothesis, C equal to A plus BY, where C is consumption expenditure, A is autonomous consumption, B equal to MPC, then which of the following is false? Again, this is a negative question. We need to know that they are asking us to find out which is false. They are not asking us to find out which is true. That is general mistake that we make. We often feel that when statements are given, let's just choose the correct answer. Instead, they have asked us to choose the incorrect one, right? So let's look at the statements given below. MPC is independent of level of income. MPC is dependent of level of income. APC falls as income rises. APC is greater than MPC. So we know that this is absolute income hypothesis. These are some of the findings of absolute income hypothesis by Keynes. Coming to the first statement, MPC is independent of level of income, which we have already discussed in our first question. MPC is exogenously determined, it is positive and constant, it is independent. So MPC is independent of level of income is a correct statement. So that cannot be the answer. Which makes the second question, which is just second statement, that is just opposite to that of first statement, false. Okay, MPC is dependent of level of income is completely opposite to that of the first statement. So it has to be false, right? Still, we will go with the third and fourth option. 3. APC falls as income rises. That is one of the important findings of absolute income hypothesis, right? Absolute income hypothesis says that as the income increases, consumption doesn't increase up to that level, right? That is what is Keynes' psychological theory of consumption or absolute income hypothesis. Income increases, but consumption doesn't increases as much as that of increase in income, right? So APC declines as income increase. Every increase in income, with every increase in income, propensity to consume will fall, and APC will be always greater than MPC, and this consumption function of Keynes is always related to short run, because we know that Keynes believed that in long run we are all dead. So the last two options are also correct. APC falls as income rises is correct, and APC is greater than MPC is one of the biggest finding of Keynes theory. So in this, 2 will be the answer. MPC is dependent of level of income will be the answer, which is false. Moving on to the next question. Keynesians hold consumption function as non-proportional, proportional, both of the above, none of the above. And we know Keynesians, that is absolute income hypothesis, we know that as income increases, consumption doesn't increase proportionally. That means consumption function is non-proportional, right? So the answer has to be 1, right? Moving on to the next question. According to Keynes, aggregate consumption is a function of Again, it's a question on absolute income hypothesis. So according to him, consumption depends on current disposable income. It doesn't, we know that it is YD, that is current disposable income. Consumption depends on current disposable, not on previous one or not on future expected income. It depends upon current disposable income. So the answer has to be 3. We are moving on to the next question, which has appeared in 2015. Which of the following statements are correct? First statement, according to Keynes, as income rises, lower proportion of income is spent on consumption. We know that this statement is absolutely correct. That is a major finding of absolute income hypothesis of Keynes, right? Second statement, according to Kuznets, as income rises, the average propensity to save remains fairly stable and constant. With this, we need to know what a Kuznets paradox is, right? Kuznets paradox is where he believed that, not like Keynes, he said that consumption function, he considered a consumption function under long run, okay, where he considered APC and MPC and all is constant. It is not that APC is greater than MPC like Keynes' findings of absolute income. He said that that is wrong. In long run, APC, MPC, everything is constant and stable, and which tend to revolve or rotate around a constant figure like 0.9 over a period of time. So there is no tendency for even APC and APS also. Average propensity to consume and average propensity to save also. Both of the variables doesn't have any tendency to decline as income increases. And in long run, both of them tend to be equal. And another major thing you need to remember here is that Kuznets paradox is considered as a long run consumption function, whereas Keynes consumption function is a short run consumption function. Another important difference between Keynes and Kuznets consumption function is that Kuznets considered that there is no autonomous consumption. You can find that Kuznets consumption function is equal to C equal to BY, where he has completely ignored that there is no autonomous consumption in long run. So the consumption function is just BY, that is MPC and income. Right, so there is no autonomous consumption under Kuznets consumption function. Coming to the question, what is the statement? According to Kuznets, as income rises, the average propensity to save remains fairly stable and constant, which is true, right? Because according to Kuznets, we know that there is no tendency for APC and MPS to decline as income. Both are same in long run. Let it be APC, let it be APS, let it be MPC, MPS, everything is stable and constant in long run according to Kuznets. So the answer has to be 1, that is both 1 and 2 are true. Next question, which has appeared 2 times, that is 2016 and 17. If MPC is equal to APC for all the level of income, consumption function will be. So you know that MPC is equal to APC in whose consumption function? Under Kuznets consumption function. And we know that Kuznets consumption function is C equal to BY. So the answer has to be 3, that is C equal to BY. Right? Moving on to question which has appeared in 2017. Which of the following statement of Kuznets are true? So you can see that there is a stress on Kuznets consumption function recently. So please make sure that you concentrate on Kuznets consumption function or Kuznets paradox. Okay. Which of them are true? No constant term in linear consumption function. So fitted. MPC and APC are not significantly different. This is a kind of repetitive question that has been asked previously, but in a different words. Right? No constant term. You know that the constant term in the linear consumption function is A0, that is autonomous consumption. A0 plus BY is what is Keynes consumption theory, and that is a constant. A0 is that constant term which is not there in Kuznets function. Is that true? Yes, that statement is true. There is no constant term A0, that is autonomous consumption, is not there in Kuznets consumption function. Second statement, APC and MPC were not significantly different. Yes, that is also correct, because according to Kuznets, APC is equal to MPC in long run. There is no significant difference between APC and MPC in long run. Everything is same. So the answer has to be A, that is both the statements. Oh, I'm sorry. See, this is the mistake we usually make. We usually think that A is an option where both statements are true. right? Whereas option D, both statements are true. So these are some of the, even if we know the concepts, some carelessness that we usually make. So the option is D, both the statements are true. Okay, so D is the answer. According to James Duesenberry, individual consumption pattern is reversible, irreversible, interdependent, independent. Okay, so you know that relative income hypothesis has been propounded by James S. Duesenberry. So it is relative income hypothesis that they are talking about. Like Kuznets, he is also talking about a long run consumption function. And we know that there are two effects, demonstration effect and ratchet effect. Right, demonstration effect is where we have a tendency to always imitate our neighbors. When they are in a better condition, we will always strive towards that standard of living. Even if there is an increase in absolute income, we are always comparing our income level with that of the neighbors, and it's always a relative income that is being considered under relative income hypothesis according to James S. Duesenberry. So we always tend to copy them, that is demonstrate them in our consumption, right? So that is one effect. Ratchet effect is where we say that when there is a fall in income, our consumption doesn't fall like that. If there is an fall in our income, we cannot just reduce our consumption automatically. So that means APC raises as income falls, which is completely opposite to that of Keynes finding. Keynes said that APC falls as income rises. So this is like APC rises as income falls. We cannot cut down our consumption immediately like our income has reduced. Income can reduce immediately, but our consumption cannot go down. So consumption is irreversible. Okay, and he supports Kuznets where he say that APC and MPC is almost remain constant under a long run consumption function. Going back to the question, which is correct? Reversible. Is it reversible? No, consumption function is not reversible, it is irreversible. We cannot go down, we cannot cut down our consumption as our income reduces. So option 2 is answer. Whether it is dependent or interdependent, it is independent or interdependent, it is interdependent. We always we feel like there is a need, we will always compare it with the income of, it is dependent on our neighbor's income. We always it is a relative income that we always consider. So the answer is, there are two options that can be taken, that is 2 and 3 is answer. The consumption under James Duesenberry's relative income hypothesis is, it is irreversible and it is interdependent. Right, the option is 3, that is 2 and 3. Next question. Bandwagon effect is found in which of the following? Life cycle hypothesis, permanent income hypothesis, absolute income hypothesis, and relative income hypothesis. Okay, so we know that bandwagon effect is an effect where we follow a trend like a wagon, right? If suppose there is a new trend that is happening in the industry, like mostly like we will take fashion industry. Now the fashion trend is crop top or torn jeans or something, we tend to follow that trend. Everyone will tend to follow that trend, that everyone will have one piece of that clothing with them, right? So it's like we are following a trend. So like that, which of the following theses have that kind of tendency that we imitate a trend or we go behind a trend? We know that relative income hypothesis by James S. Duesenberry is where they talk about that demonstration effect. We always tend to copy our neighbor, or we always have a tendency to compare our consumption pattern with that of our neighbor. So the answer has to be 4, that is relative income hypothesis. Next question, which has appeared in 2017. Which one of the following is not an assumption of permanent income hypothesis? We know that permanent income hypothesis has been introduced by Milton Friedman, and according to him, there are two kinds of income: permanent income and transitory income. And there are two types of consumption also, that is permanent consumption and transitory consumption. You know what is permanent consumption? Permanent income, YT is where that is a permanent anticipated future income that we always used to get. I'm earning 50,000 right now this month. I know that next month also I will be receiving the same. That's a salary that I get usually. So it is an anticipated income, that is a kind of permanent income. And according to Milton Friedman, he believed that your consumption will always depend on permanent income. not on transitory income. Transitory income is like that income that is an unanticipated income. You are winning a lottery the next month. You have never anticipated that you are going to win that. You are an agriculturalist and you are having a good weather. You have a bumper crop. You get a lot of profit. That is a kind of transitory income which you cannot predict. It is unanticipated that you get something like lottery or some good weather. Is we cannot anticipate the weather also. So the income that comes unanticipatedly is what we call transitory income. According to Milton Friedman, your consumption will always depend on your permanent income. You cannot make a consumption pattern on the basis of an unanticipated income. Right. Likewise, consumption is also two type, that is permanent consumption and transitory consumption. Transitory consumption can also be positive and negative, where it can be positive or it can be negative. Like if can be negative, suppose transitory consumption can be negative. Suppose if there is unanticipated emergency, health emergency, my kid is falling sick, I need to spend. So my consumption have to, there is an unanticipated consumption during that month. Some birthdays are coming, some festival is coming, some guests are coming, consumption do increase. So transitory consumption can be positive and negative also. Okay, it can increase, it can decrease at certain month. Like if it is a certain season, if it is too hot in March and all, then we will be using more of electricity. That means more of electricity bill will come, that only that particular month that transitory consumption will be there. Right. So according to Milton Friedman, and he says that there is a APC is also constant. These are some of the findings of Milton Friedman. Right. So coming back to the question, first assumption, transitory income can be positive and negative. Yes, that is an assumption of Milton Friedman. And you need to understand that they are asking which is not an assumption. So one cannot be the answer. It is an assumption. Permanent income depends on human and non-human wealth. Actually, that is also an assumption of Milton Friedman's permanent income hypothesis, because he said that permanent income is what we actually get every month, or it's an anticipated income which depends upon our income. Human wealth is basically the regular income, and non-human wealth is where it depends upon our skill, training, and all other economic activities done by the person. So yes, that is also true. Permanent income is depending upon our regular income and our skill and training that we have acquired. Next assumption is transitory consumption can be positive and negative. Yes, that is also, we have seen that C can be CT and CP, right? It can be positive and transitory, that is CT, can be positive and negative as well. Next assumption is APC is greater than MPC. That is not correct. That assumption is actually of Keynes absolute income hypothesis. Under permanent income hypothesis, APC is constant. Right? So that answer will be 4. That is a wrong assumption. Okay. So we will stop here. We will continue in the next class.